The prison boss narcissist, lieutenants in action. I'm often asked what's the spread between male and female narcissists. It's roughly 50-50. Many people think there are more male narcissists than there are female. It's not the case. The distribution is roughly equal. The distribution is less equal when it comes to the sub-schools. You find more males amongst lesser, more females amongst mid-range. Whilst females do use violence, physical violence, it is less often, and they utilize other forms of manipulation than physical violence. But the prison boss narcissist, who I've spoken about before, back in February and March, and I'd encourage you to watch those videos, the prison boss narcissist, the prison boss narcissist school and cadre, the prison boss narcissist seducer, and the IPPS Speaks parts 1, 2, and 3, so that you can understand more about a female narcissist that's physically violent, the various narcissistic indicators that determine what she is, and also the impact that was had upon the male victim, her former husband. She's back in the news again, but this time it's in relation to her lieutenants. Some people use the term flying monkey. I don't like that, and if you want to know why, I'd encourage you to go to the Knowledge Vault, link in the video description, and obtain the truth about flying monkeys. You'll be somewhat surprised. Instead, I talk about members of the coterie and lieutenants. Members of the coterie are generally supporters of the narcissist, who will help the narcissist to a degree, but they have not bought in to the wholesale mantra of the narcissist to the extent that a lieutenant has. The lieutenant is a step above the coterie member. The lieutenant is seen as the able doer of what the narcissist requires, more proactive, more defensive with regard to the narcissist. Sometimes this is because the narcissist has manipulated them with reward or threat. You better do this or else. If you do this for me, I will allow you this. In some instances, the lieutenant, enamored with the narcissist, does things of their own volition. They do so out of a sense of loyalty to the narcissist. Sometimes it might be familial loyalty, spousal loyalty. Sometimes it's because that lieutenant has a sexual attraction towards the narcissist. Sometimes they feel a sense of obligation because they're a colleague or a friend. And therefore, they do many things of their own volition without the narcissist necessarily having to tell them what to do. It isn't always the case that the narcissist says, I need you to go and put a brick through that person's window. Instead, the narcissist will complain about the way that they've been treated by an ex, and therefore, as part of showing their loyalty and teaching that horrible ex a lesson, they themselves decide to go and put a brick through their window. The Daily Mail reports, written by Kevin Donald, that the brother and lover of a prison reform boss who tortured her husband throughout their 20-year marriage are both facing court for intimidating potential witnesses in her trial. Witness intimidation is a serious criminal offence, and of course, it is important for a narcissist to try and nullify the threat to control that's posed by witnesses who would speak out against her. In some instances, the narcissist would do that themselves, but in other instances, they would rely upon lieutenants and coterie members essentially to do their dirty work. Sometimes it's done at the direction of the narcissist, otherwise it's more subtle. The narcissist pity plays or complains about the way that they're being treated or how this person is a problem, planting the seed with the lieutenant for them to do something about it. Cherie Spencer, aged 45, of Budworth, East Yorkshire, was jailed for 4 years for a campaign of violence and sexual humiliation against her husband, Richard, in the worst case of controlling and coercive behaviour the judge had ever seen. Now Spencer's brother, Sean McCann, and her lover, Adrian Taylor, are both to go on trial in separate cases of allegedly trying to warn off witnesses who might have been called to give evidence against her. Her brother is a non-intimate secondary source. Her lover is either the new intimate partner primary source or an intimate partner secondary source, most likely primary. Note, how Mr. Spencer, having removed himself from this abusive and toxic marriage, wrenches himself out as the intimate partner primary source, thus becoming former. That creates a problem for her, as she no longer has an intimate partner primary source and therefore took action to replace him with the lover. Spencer made 46-year-old Richard's life a living hell, with verbal attacks and beatings that left him cowering on the floor in the fetal position. On one occasion, she defecated on the floor and forced him to clean it up, and on another she beat him with a wine bottle so badly it permanently disfigured his ear, physical violence and belittlement. In furious tirades, ignition of heated fury, she would call him a tiny cunt. Invalidation, insult, fat boy, a pussy, and dum-dum, and cause bruises and scratches that he would need to cover with makeup before going outside. For years, he secretly recorded video and audio of his wife's attacks on him, and when police came involved, he handed over 43 images of his bruised face, taken on different dates following assaults he had suffered. Adrian Taylor, 52, of Market Waite in East Yorkshire, will appear at Hull Crown Court accused of witness intimidation. No plea has yet been entered in his case. He is accused of trying to menace his former partner, Caroline Grant, who he believed may have been called to give evidence against Spencer. Spencer's brother, Sean McCann, 44, of Rugeley, Staffordshire, will appear at Cannock Magistrates on June the 12th, accused of intimidating a witness, Mr. Spencer, on October the 10th last year. As it turned out, no witnesses were actually needed because Spencer, a senior prison service manager who bragged of a friendship with Boris Johnson, pleaded guilty to all charges. She admitted assaults against Richard and controlling and coercive behaviour across the duration of their relationship, which began in 2000 and led to marriage in 2009. They split in 2021 when Richard could no longer hide the appalling abuse he had suffered at her hands. In February this year at Hull Crown Court, Spencer admitted 3 counts of assault causing actual bodily harm and controlling and coercive behaviour. Sentencing, Judge Kate Rayfield told Spencer, "This is the worst case of controlling and coercive behaviour I have seen." She described how she had sat through 2 hours of video and audio recordings of Spencer hurling hateful abuse at her husband. Judge Rayfield said, "In one of those recordings it is clear you had defecated on the floor. Your husband can be heard scrubbing while you are heard to say to him, 'I made you do that. All I asked you to do was go to the shop.' I watched as you spat in his face time and time again and called him bitch, tiny cunt, and skank and insulted members of his family. You whispered in his face in the most sinister way, shouted demands and instructions at him, get the fucking chicken on, get to the fucking shop, and warning him, you will learn." The judge added, "By your actions you intended to humiliate or degrade Richard, and you have caused him significant psychological harm. Richard Spencer was a vulnerable victim, isolated from his family and trapped financially." A recap there, of course, of the various manipulations and abuse that she meted out against him, but also how 2 of her lieutenants became involved in order to try and protect her, to prevent a conviction, ultimately not needed because she pleaded guilty. You might wonder, why would a narcissist plead guilty to the charges? Ordinarily, would they not deny them? In some instances where she deems that it would be appropriate for her to do so, she would do so, because it would get her a lighter sentence. And in the circumstances, she asserts control by agreement, acquiescing to the charges against her, but doing so believing, I will get out sooner. She doesn't truly accept that she's guilty. Once again, it's a form of manipulation to enable her to assert control by nullifying a greater threat to control, namely a longer sentence. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.